Good morning, campers. Welcome to Radio Camp Apple, a Percy Jackson Reloading podcast. I'm your host, Zach.
And I'm B.
And this week we read Chapter 6 of The Last Olympian, My Cookies Get Scorched.
Yeah. So this was depressing. This was an extremely... I keep saying that about like almost every chapter in this book so far, but this one really takes the cake.
And I was like, you're going to eat those words next week, and I was right.
I mean, I don't think I necessarily did, because I feel like we didn't get the whole picture of his backstory. Like, I don't know.
Wait, he didn't grow up to be Damien?
Like, yeah, his mom was... Well, we'll get into the stuff about Luke's mom, but like, I don't know. I feel like there's other reasons why Luke is a jerk, because some people have bad childhoods and they don't end up being evil. It's sort of like the cool motive still murder, like gif from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. That's kind of how I feel about Luke. It's like, oh, your mom had problems. A lot of people's moms have problems. They don't then like turn into a like Titan and then want to like destroy Olympus. That's, that's on you, boo-boo.
I was more concerned like this was an episode of like Hoarders where they come in and like, oh my God, this is a mess. Everything's in the red zone. You have to start throwing away these PBJs.
Honestly, props to Rick Riordan because he does paint a very evocative picture. I think actually this chapter is one of his more like heart-wrenching chapters. I think it's because it's less grounded in like the fantastical. Like, yeah, there are some fantastical elements we'll talk about with his mom, but a lot of it is just sort of like very like realistic, sad family stuff about like her problems. And
well, he's really good at realistic, sad family stuff, which is something that people don't give enough credit to Rick Riordan for. Like when I see people giving credit for him as like his romance stuff and a lot of his like action stuff, but I wouldn't give it to any of that stuff. No. But what I'm talking about is like people kind of forget that Rick Riordan's really good at like this type of drama, like especially in The Lightning Thief where you're dealing with like children abuse and you're dealing with like people hitting other people. He's really good at making like realistic, I guess, tragedy and like that nice family drama.
I agree. It's like definitely reminiscent of like some of the Gabe stuff in the first book. Like I think that sometimes really like grounds the books in like a kind of like sad thing that's like not necessarily relatable, but just sort of like, oh, you can picture like a real person dealing with this. Well, like sure, there's usually like a somewhat mythological element to it, like for instance, there's a reason that Sally Jackson was with Gabe because of his smell and all of that stuff. But like in the grand scheme of things, it was about an abusive relationship and that's applicable to real life. And the same thing with this, it's sort of like about someone dealing with trauma and like living in the past and having all sorts of like unreasonable understandings of reality because of something traumatic happening. And like that's definitely something that happens in real life regardless of the other like mythological stuff happening.
I was getting my vibes of like Rick Riordan. I was accidentally reading Great Expectations and would have been like, man, this is a good idea for a plot. Maybe if I put this in Percy Jackson. Because you have the whole Great Expectation thing, like, I have to have everything perfect for when Luke comes home.
For when he comes home. Yeah, I think that's like definitely a mythological theme too of like the hero going away and then like their family is left waiting for them. That's even referenced in this chapter about.
Well, that's why like in a lot of stories with the hero's journey, a lot of the time the guardians or the parents, normally they're dead because you don't have to deal with the situation. This exact type of situation that can occur.
Yeah, Theseus. They talk about how Theseus was supposed to have
a white flag was supposed to be up in Athens.
White sails, yeah, and then he forgot, and then his father jumped off a palace roof in despair. So it's kind of like it's reminiscent of a lot of those mythological themes of like you go off and you have this great battle and you're focusing on that stuff, and then at home is your family who has to reckon with this worry. And it's very intentional that that's like paralleled in this chapter, right? You immediately go from seeing what Luke's actions have wrought, what things have been left in his wake as he's gone off and gone on these sort of, I don't know, to some extent adventures, to other extents war crimes, but let's not get into that.
Well, it depends on what type of the equator you're in. You're either in South America or Europe.
It's tragic even when like Luke leaves to be a quote unquote like good demigod or whatever and goes on good quests and is hasn't turned to the, I guess, dark side. I
The
feel like
dark
we're
side
just
of the
using Star Wars
Force? Yeah.
terminology, but yeah, it's the same kind of idea, but it's still tragic.
What makes things so much easier when you go by like Star Wars logic of having the dark side and the light side, or I guess Jedi and Sith?
Yeah, though I think it's more complicated than that, obviously, but yeah, this isn't even necessarily about that. Like, they hint at the stuff of him being one with Kronos and all of that, and that's doubly tragic for his mom, but that's, like, not even the biggest tragedy to her, because to her, it's her never seeing him, and him going off and, like, kind of leaving her in this endless state of anticipation. I mean, there's also like the other mysterious things about her past, which we'll like talk about, specifically the conversations that they have. But yeah, this is so dark. This is a very dark chapter, and it's like I found it even darker than some of the chapters that we've read that had straight up like war, like people dying and things like that, because I guess that isn't always as emotionally impactful if it's like a lot of battle scenes or something, but this is what happens after the battle, you know what I mean?
Well, I think the reason why it's so tragic, and I think we'll talk about it a little more in detail, is that it seems more, you can sympathize with her a lot more because you can understand, like, oh, we understand who Luke is, we understand these whole adventures that we had, and how it's really hard to have, like, the redemption arc almost because, what's her mom gonna do? And also the idea of someone that's so crazy that they don't understand what's going on, like, they're so cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs that it's very sad to watch. Like, it's a lot like, again, like a lot of TLC shows where people are like hoarders and stuff, where you see them and it's almost like you're horrified, but you also wish they get better, but because it's TV, most likely they're not going to get better because that's just who they are.
Yeah, or I mean, like with shows like that, it's more like, oh, well, let's like see them have their house cleaned out and then everything will be fine, and they have to, I don't know, I guess, get professional help and all sorts of things. Yeah.
Well, chances are what ends up happening is that none of that happens. They go back to the way they were.
That's true. Sometimes they're like, oh, and then 6 months later, they're exactly the same. Yeah, I know what you're saying. There's obviously some heavy themes about trauma in this chapter because obviously there's this, like, the mythic stuff that happens to his mom and why she acts the way she acts, but there's definitely, like, a parallel to, like, I guess something akin to, like, PTSD or something where she's, like, not quite engaging with reality because of what happened.
So the chapter kind of opens up and Percy Jackson is going through time and space itself.
Oh yeah, the shadow thing.
Yeah, and pretty much it's exactly how I would imagine going through shadows and stuff. It's just horrifying, terrifying, and instantaneous.
But he loves it. It's like a dark ride.
Yeah, well, I think it's more like the best way to put it is like if you've ever been on the Tower of Terror where you go in complete darkness and then you just get shot up and then you get shot down and you're just terrified, but you love it.
Yeah, well, I have a memory of going in a water slide when I was a kid and not knowing that there was a part of it that was just completely pitch black. And I feel like that's what it feels like to travel through shadows, where you're like, oh God, all of a sudden it's completely dark.
That's like when I worked at Disney, I actually won a free trip to go to Tower of Terror with the lights off. So you just have like a drop ride where you're in pitch blackness and there's no show effects on.
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare.
And you forget that I'm afraid of heights too. There's a part the doors open up and you look down.
Oh yeah, no, I've been on Tower of Terror. It's bad.
Well, I think the scariest part though is I actually got to go to the very tippity top of the tower, like as a tour part of it. And I looked down and realized how far the Ferris wheel is. And I just took one step, walked back inside, and just waited for everyone else. So I'm like, I'm good. I thought about, because I forget the French word of like, if I dropped right now, it would take me a good like 40 seconds or probably less to realize, oh man, maybe I made a mistake.
You'd be like Wile E. Coyote, you like hold up a sign that says yikes or something.
Yes. And this is where like the chapter kind of opens up with this, where Percy Jackson feels like he's made a grave mistake, but Nico's like, I love this because I've done this so many times because I'm awesome.
Oh yeah, he's like, it's funny that this sort of happens off screen, so to speak, where he's been training as like this shadow walker and we didn't really know this at all because he's like, I don't know, of course he's like the spooky son of Hades, so he's like out there traveling through shadows, and then he like alludes to his sort of training with this, like, oh, the first time he did it, he was like exhausted for a week and now it just makes him tired. And
oh no, he straight up slept for a week.
Yeah.
I've had that experience too, where you've ever taken a nap and you woke up and you're like, oh my God, what year is it?
That happened to me the Thanksgiving weekend because it snowed December 1st and I hadn't gone outside in a couple days, and I just went outside and I was like, it literally was Thanksgiving and now it's Christmas. Like it just turned into a winter wonderland like over a weekend. That's kind of how I felt. Like I pulled a Rip Van Winkle, which actually is based in this part of the world where I live, where the guy just falls asleep for years and years and wakes up and everything's different.
Sometimes I wish that would have been nice, where I can like just sleep for a whole year. I guess that would be called a coma, but then I can skip through some cool stuff.
That sounds fun.
I don't know, maybe. But yeah, the whole thing with like Nico, with this weird ability that he has where he can teleport and stuff, seems very convenient to half the plots of Percy Jackson.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking the same thing, like, oh wow, they had to really introduce this fast travel stuff
at the end of
later,
the series.
Because if it was earlier, it'd be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna like really quickly just pop on over to the underworld, just, a quick day trip. Like that's what it would have been like. It would have totally been a different story if he had these abilities. So the timing makes sense on Rick Riordan's part to put it here.
Thank God they have this, because in The Lightning Thief, oh no, we gotta get to Hades very quickly. Nico's just like, yeah, guys, let's just do it. And the book's 15 pages long.
No, it's ridiculous. Like, yeah, it's kind of funny to think. Like, I guess, but that's also in some ways metaphorical of growing up, where it's like, oh, I have these tools that would have made things before so much easier, but I needed to go through those things in order to gain those tools. It's kind of like that recursive logic thing of oh, well, he wouldn't have met Nico and learned about this if he hadn't gone on his original quest to begin with, kind of thing. So it makes sense.
Well, it's like a causality loop. You need something to happen for something to occur. Though I find it funny.
He wouldn't just arrive at camp and they're like, here's all of these really amazing abilities. He had to learn them from people. So that kind of makes sense.
Or you have the other approach where Nico is like, oh, yeah, several times I got lost in China. A few times. I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, that make that sort of a Demigod Files-esque little short story thing. That would be great to sort of see what was. Because I always feel like Nico's popping in and out oh, hey guys, I have some spooky emo stuff to say, and then he disappears for a chapter, and then he's back and he says more spooky emo stuff. It's where were you, Nico? And factoring the shadow travel thing, I just feel like he's kind of been all over the place and we don't know what he's been up to.
No, that's totally super emo powers. As a small emo kid, I would have been I wish I could teleport and disappear into shadow itself. That's so metal.
Is it?
Well, this is emo kid version of myself.
It's metal if he was at all intimidating, but he's just this gaunt little child. So it's kind of just creepy.
Have you taken a look in the mirror lately?
No, I'm a gaunt child as well. And if I appeared in the shadows, someone would scream. Literally, I remember going to summer camp as a kid, and someone thought that me and my sister looked like the girl from The Ring. So they were horrified of us in our pajamas. It was because it was a sleepover thing, and we were wearing nightgowns. And oh my God, you look like the girl from The Ring. It's no, I'm just pale and have dark hair. Please stop being me.
Well, to be honest, I'm sure that you could possibly pull off a Nico cosplay so easily.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, now I went full Nico. I went from Girl from the Ring to Nico. That's trans culture, I guess.
Isn't that gender fluid?
Yeah. No, that'd be if I was one every other day or something. It's no, I'm more of a Nico today. I don't know.
I'm more of a Samara the next.
Oh, God. I really hope I never get compared to that. Do you know how many times I was called Wednesday Addams as a child? So many. So many, Zach.
Too many times?
Too many times.
Oh, man.
By my own uncles and things. They're like, oh, we look like Wednesday Addams. I know my face looks like this.
Well, luckily, they don't go to the Addams family house. They actually go to Luke's childhood home, which is very creepy.
I feel like the Addams family house is more welcoming than Luke's family home.
I don't know. I think, isn't it it's 1313 Tombstone Drive? If I remember correctly.
I mean, I would rather hang out with Gomez and Morticia than hang out with Luke's mom in her spooky trauma palace of just artifacts of times gone by.
In my mind's eye, I already know how this looks. It looks like Count Olaf's house from the original movie. Or just dilapidated and scary.
I could see that. Well, it's sort of, well, they said colonial, so his house is more like Victorian. I was picturing, I mean, yeah, if you've been to Connecticut, you've seen these houses before, like a big, beautiful colonial house, and that makes it even creepier that it's just like it used to be idyllic. I think that that's what kind of adds to like the chill of the scene is like it's not just it's like straight up creepy, you know. It's not like the description of the underworld or the description of like the labyrinth or something. It's something that used to be like really like homey and sweet and inviting, and then those things have now become like the opposite somehow because
It's destroyed beauty. That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's worse than if it was just straight up creepy because it's like, oh, I could tell this used to be like a nice home, and now there's like these layers of even.
Isn't that basically like a metaphor for just Luke's mom at that point?
Yeah, no, exactly. The house and her are like kind of the same, right? Because you could also tell that she was a good mom because as when we meet her as a character, she's very concerned with where her son is, and like that's like a big personality trait is she cares about him a lot and wants him to be safe and checks in on him. And even when she thinks Percy is Luke, says, please be safe. So there's like this kernel of goodness to her. It's not that she's bad. It's just that she's like deluded. And that's even more upsetting. You're like, oh, you used to be like this really nice, kind, loving mom who like really cared about her kid living in this really sweet house. And even just like it's creepy because all of these things that represent comfort become like the opposite of comfortable. Like, oh, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He loved peanut butter and jelly, but it's just like these endless sandwiches that she keeps making in anticipation for him being there, and then they just like rot away. Or like the little stuffed animals outside like used to be inviting, but now they're like all dilapidated from being outside.
See, that's where again that comes back to the idea of destroyed beauty, where you have this, and I think it is so creepy to have like toys left out. There's nothing more sad.
Oh God, toys. Nothing's creepier than an old toy. Like just like left to be all like covered in cobwebs. Creepy.
Well, not even that. There was like actually, you know what the interesting thing that corresponds with this, B, which is really weird, is all the toys that Luke's mom has are things that Percy Jackson has defeated.
Right, that's true, because it's like the sort of representation of these monsters, right? There's a Minotaur, there's a Medusa, there's a bunch of different things.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy too, and if you think about it, because of all these weird visions that she has, like it's almost like she knew Percy Jackson was coming, because everything that she sets out are things in Percy's life, like the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. What's Tyson's favorite food?
Right, yeah, that's true. I mean, of course, that's just common in general, though, with kids, too. I do think it's, like, very intentional that, like, these things that she's obsessed with are, like, things that Luke liked when he was a kid. You know what I mean? She's not making, like, a full dinner for him. She's
not making, like, a White Claw?
That'd be... I'm carbonating the alcohol now. No, I don't think she's doing that. But, yeah, like, it's, like, cookies that she's burning. It's peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that are left to rot. You know what I mean? Like, it represents, like, this kind of sweet idea of what his likes are now that I don't... Do you think that Kronos is eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? I don't think he cares for that anymore. You know what I mean?
Well, here's the question, though, is that because they merged together, does Kronos have to eat now?
I don't know. I don't think so, probably, because he's like possessed Luke's body or something. So maybe Luke's body needs to eat, but Kronos doesn't care or something. I don't know.
He's just like, I gotta eat all this food. It's like eating it's like they come back and like Luke's like super duper fat now because all he's eating is McDonald's because Kronos doesn't understand like portion control.
I was thinking that it would be like a Voldemort situation where he's just like drinking like the blood of unicorns blood? And stuff, just like mythical creatures that he's like stealing blood from. It could be something creepy like that, or he doesn't eat. I don't know. I don't know if that lore is explained.
He's drinking Pegasus blood.
Pegasus blood, yeah. Oh, that's really upsetting to picture.
Oh yeah, it's very much like a Quill situation. It's like, give me some of this delicious unicorn blood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, fun fact, if he didn't drink that...
A cursed life, a half-life.
When you drink unicorn blood, you become ungodly unlucky.
Because you're like cursed. Yeah.
Yeah, he's cursed, so that's the reason why he failed Voldemort. Because he drank unicorn blood.
Yep, he cursed himself. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm picturing with Kronos. But back to the house. Have we established it's creepy? It's creepy. It's sad and creepy. It's somehow both.
See, that's where I was getting the Count Olaf vibes. of like this house is being super creepy and dilapidated in that way.
Yeah, I feel like the difference that I see is like the Count Olaf house I've always pictured as like it's been dilapidated for a long time, and it's like a different kind of creepy where it's like, oh, this has always been gross because like a gross guy's lived there forever. Yeah,
This
I
is the
mean,
house that a drunk lives in.
unless I guess there's some theories that like, oh, his home is inherited from his family and it used to be nice, and like that's sad. But I think that because of the time frame of this, it's like in more recent memory that this was a nice home, and so that's like even more upsetting because you can kind of see like this sort of sweet like suburban home peeking through the very creepy set dressing of like endless sandwiches left to rot, you know?
Ah, yes, it's like the Sarah McLachlan song in Toy Story 2.
Yes, it's very much. It's a lot like that, actually. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. There we go. Take it away, Sarah.
I just watched that pretty recently. I watched that like last weekend. It was sad. It made me cry still. It still gets me.
It still gets you. So Percy Jackson and Nico and Miss O'Leary like walk into a house. This sounds like a comedy. And guess
And
who's
it's not.
there?
There she is.
Luke's mom is just like,
Miss
oh,
Costello.
I love you, Luke. Would you like some cookies? Grandma's kisses?
This is like one of those tropes that can really be played for laughs or can be really depressing. That specific kind of like, oh, this person is like senile and or unwell in some way, and they're mistaking someone they love, like a son or a grandson or something, for somebody else. And so they're like, oh, my sweet son, come here. And it's like some person that they're not recognizing. And that's upsetting. That definitely has like parallels with like real life disease of people who have memory problems and stuff, which is like a very like disconcerting thing for a family to deal with. Like this person who's like, she has good intentions, obviously she thinks this is her son, she wants to do something good, and then it's like not him.
The difference though is that none of this is played for a laugh whatsoever.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying, is that trope can, like, sometimes, you know, it'll be like, oh, the wacky old lady mistook me for her grandson, and then she gave me, like, in Over the Garden Wall, there's the character Endicott is like this sort of guy who he thinks he's going mad. I'm not going to spoil it, but they pretend to be his like grandchildren. They're like, oh, my wonderful grandchildren. And they're just like trying to steal money from him. Like that's played for laughs. You know what I mean? Like the horse being like, I want to steal. That's the joke. But like, it's funny that that same premise can be used to be so sad. Like that, it's the two ends of the spectrum really, of like the most depressing and the most funny, you know?
See, this is where I bring in like Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, where that's not supposed to be played for a laugh, but you can easily turn that into like a joke very quickly, of like the bride waiting for her husband that left her at the altar, and everything has to be the same. I'm sure she smells so wonderful. Like, there's like things like that, but here it's very depressing very quickly. And normally when it comes to Percy Jackson, they usually have something serious happens, and normally Rick like underplays it with a joke. But here there wasn't a joke at all.
Yeah, something, right? There really isn't much joke. Like there's some like that specific kind of humor that comes from a very sad situation where like a character is uncomfortable. There's a lot of like Percy and Nico making meaningful eye contact, like let's get the frick out of here. This is really upsetting, like that stuff. But like that's not, it's a different kind of funny than like, haha, isn't this off the wall hilarious? Like it's not that.
Well, no, there wasn't the joke of like Percy Jackson eating the sandwich and then he describes exactly what was in that sandwich because it wasn't peanut butter or jelly.
Yeah.
It was like soap and like detergent because she ran out of material. There was never a joke like that. Whereas like as you're going through the house and he's describing things, even that isn't played for a joke at all. It's like, oh, you have all these sandwiches and the ones in the bottom are like super fuzzy. This is where like I think this is the one time that Rick Riordan, I think again, he's really good at like making like that family tragedy, and like when he coming down to like real things that aren't mythological, this is where he like shines. It's like how depressing it is.
Yeah, it's always shocks me though, right? Because we're so used to like heavy on the mythology, heavy on the fight scenes, and heavy on the humor, which are like not quite as relatable, I guess. I mean, the humor is meant to like endear you in like a personal way, but it's still like obviously it's not gonna like hit you emotionally necessarily. But this, I don't know. It always kind of catches me off guard when he chooses to play something straight, like, and doesn't really lean into any kind of like the humor. There, again, like I said, there is a little bit of like a haha, this is scary, let's get out of here, kind of like that level of humor, but it's never like, oh, this is funny. And that makes it more upsetting though, because you're like, oh, I'm used to these characters kind of like always having a little bit of a sense of humor about something, but there's really nothing to laugh at here. It's just too sad. There's like really there's not a kernel of anything to laugh at.
Well, and then you compare that to like the Chris Rodriguez scene in the last book where like he's crazy and he's in the bed and Clarice is trying to nurse him back to health, and that's the exact same type of premise.
Oh yeah, it's pretty similar to that actually. You're right. Yeah, that's like a very upsetting premise to have in a kid's book, is like the idea of someone like not being themselves. I think of like the okay, spoiler alert for Hunger Games if you haven't read that, but like when PETA gets hijacked and he like isn't himself.
Indoctrinated.
And it's like that same kind of like really upsetting concept of someone like not like understanding what's happening and like not being themselves. And I think that's like very scary to children, especially who are like very immersed in like an idea of like routine and expectations and like the people that they trust being the same. So like especially like a mother figure being like, do you know what I'm saying? Like that's why it's like very traumatic, like if someone has like an unstable parental figure, because kids need like routine. So the idea of like this mom like not engaging with reality and like not understanding what's happening is like very scary to kids.
Well, I think that's kind of the thing, is like when you look at parents, they're supposed to be the parental figure. They're the one usually with all the answers.
Yeah, there's
but then
like
when
the
they're
stability.
crazier than like a box of Cocoa Puffs, you don't know how to like react to that. Especially once again, you have to look at the age demographic. Is like when you have like young kids reading these books for the first time, it's probably a lot weirder because, you know, their parents most likely bought the book for them. They're the ones that's like, oh man, help me, I need like mac and cheese and like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. But then you see a character like her where she doesn't have any of the answers. All she does is make really gross peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and she's just crazy.
Yeah, and it's like it's maternal care like taken to a scary extreme where like she still does care for her son and wants to do the good mom thing of like making him food, but she like doesn't understand what's happening, and that's like really scary. And I think especially like to a kid reading this who's like still under the care of a parent, where like you and I are reading this, right? And we, you know, even though we both live at home, actually, it's like a different level of like agency where it's like, okay, if you're with someone who isn't making any sense, you can go out and get food. You know what I mean? You can go to school, you can go to work, you can drive yourself places.
Get that person help.
Exactly. You have like the understanding and the agency to like help that person. If you're like 8 years old like Luke was, and you have this character acting this way, what are you gonna do? You have no control over it.
Well, he does have control. He decided to leave.
That's true. I mean, that's a level of control he had, because I guess he didn't know how to help. And that's like, oh God, I can't imagine. If I read this as like a kid, I think it would have really upset me.
Really? Why would that upset you?
Well, like I said, if you were a kid and reading that, it kind of upsets me now, but it's sort of, I have the distance of being an adult where like now I see my mom in this case as someone who is like not my peer necessarily, but like we are both adults. So like the behavior of my parent doesn't necessarily have anything to do with my well-being in the same way that when you're a kid. Like if you are a child and you don't have agency and everything in your life is dependent on your guardians, and those guardians are unreasonable or like unable to understand what's happening, that's scary to kids because they don't have any other way of helping themselves, really. I mean, there's systems in place and whatever, but that's like the entire theme of Unfortunate Events, right? We've talked about that before when we've discussed that series, where it's like, it's scary when your parents are like die, because then it's like, oh, well, then you have to like go to all these different guardians. Like, can we trust them? Are they good at taking care of us? Because if you're under a certain age, you can't take care of yourself. So you're like, you're dependent on another person. And if you're dependent on someone who's like totally off the wall bonkers and is like believing
trying to steal your
like,
fortune.
Yeah, in that case, or believing in something that isn't true or whatever. It's more
like Aunt Josephine, where she's like believes in like irrational
exactly.
fears.
It's more reminiscent of like an Aunt Josephine situation. That's like super horrifying. I mean, any kind of situation where an authority figure suddenly can't fulfill their duties of having authority and knowing what to do. And if you're like 8, what are you going to do when you're 8? Like, I don't know. You're just going to leave? You're going to pack up your stuff and leave, which is like also horrifying.
Which is just you, B. What didn't that? You packed up your stuffed animals and you go for a walk.
I did do passive aggressively do that when I was a child. When I would like argue about something dumb, I would like make a bindle out of blankets and put all my most important objects, which included like, I don't know, Famous Amos cookies and like Smart Food popcorn and a few of my most important stuffed animals, and put it in my baby blanket and put it on the end of a stick and walk away. But like, I don't know,
we
like a
joke
block
about
away.
that, but that's pretty much what Luke did. It's the exact same thing.
That's what Luke did, but instead of walking like a street away, he just kept walking, which is, your home life has to be really messed up that if you're 8 years old and being a demigod who's constantly under the threat of monsters killing you, if that's a better option than being at home. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's if you're weighing those cost benefits and you're like, "Oh, well, I guess I should leave because it's probably better than here." Your home life's messed up, you know?
I guess being homeless is a much better option at that point.
Oh, geez. It's like, I found this chapter so upsetting because of that.
And in that case, why doesn't Luke at that point, once he gets to the camp, be like, "Hey, Chiron, why don't you help my Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs mom? Can she stay with us?"
He probably didn't understand, right? Like, I think to some extent.
As a teenager, probably.
As a teenager, maybe. But I guess I can't say. I can't say why he didn't help her. That's a little frustrating, honestly. He's kind of a jerk, as we've established, so.
Because this isn't like Harry Potter in the sense of like, once you're at school. Because there's like, oh, you can stay here.
Right,
I understand,
you can go
I guess,
back.
the whole...
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I don't know. I mean, he probably just like didn't want to deal with it anymore, which is like a certain kind of like reaction to trauma too, being like, oh, this horrible thing happened. I don't want to look back. I don't want to try and fix it. I have this new goal, this new life, sort of. I don't know. He just burned bridges.
Now, does this add more to Luke's actions? Do you think you can sympathize with him a little more? Or what do you think? Because this seems like a more of a bigger bombshell.
I can both see why it contributed to the way that Luke has acted, but I also don't think it justifies it, which is kind of my general feeling about sad backstories of villains, like that kind of whole gestalt. Like, if you're going to show the sad backstory of a villain, yeah, okay, that makes them more well-rounded. It makes me understand their motivations more. But, like, there are tons of people who have tough lives, and maybe they have certain difficulties that they can't help. But I think once you actively hurt other people because of something that has happened to you, that's not justified. Do you know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at with Luke, where it's like he crosses that line for me.
Well, it's the exact same thing with like Darth Vader and how like that guy murdered children. Like, there's no really redemption. Like, I guess that's the whole point of all of Star Wars, and then the prequels is like, oh, the redemption and tragedy of Darth Vader. Nah, he sliced up kids. Like, I don't think he needs any type of redemption.
Yeah, no, I think you're allowed to do that with characters. Like, if you think that like they've done something irredeemable, then they've done something irredeemable. Like, you could talk till you're blue in the face about all the things that happened to them when they were a kid, when they were younger.
Why Kylo Ren is so awesome, but he's a dumbass? Yeah.
Like, I'm sure that there are plenty of justifications for all sorts of reasons why, like, I don't know, other campers act the way they act. There's reasons why Annabeth acts the way she acts. There's reasons why Clarice has such an anger problem because of her dad and all of that stuff. Like, everyone has baggage in that camp. Like, that's kind of the whole thing. There's a song in the musical about their godly parents and how they're all freaking traumatized, and how like they all like have these weird complexes of trying to like please them, and also like they hate them in a weird way. Like, of course, yeah, people have complicated lives, but not all of them ended up being genocidal, like Titan murderous beings like that. Only one did that. Just one guy. You know what I mean? You need to have a certain kind of personality.
Well, it takes a special kind of stupid to do that.
Yeah, maybe a special kind of stupid, a certain kind of, I don't know, entitlement, I guess. A certain kind of like...
No, I don't think entitlement. I think it's more of like you're so broken that the only thing that you can do is pick the worst possible outcome and tear everything down, because I guess it adds more of like an ideology and also more of a motivation to Luke in the sense of like, oh, the gods did all this to her and how she's all cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And this is one of the other reasons because, oh yeah, my dad was like, hey, you should totally do this thing. And she did the thing and ruined her entire life.
Yeah, well, I mean,
so I can't get my mom back.
My point was that I see it as entitlement in the sense that like Luke is willing to do anything to hurt other people because he feels hurt. You know that phrase like hurt people kind of thing, like where it's like he thinks that just because he's gone through so much that he's sort of like owed this retribution. He's owed revenge on people. He'll like watch the whole world burn just to like show that, you know, he had to put up with so
and
much.
Whiz on the
like,
ashes.
Even he's on the side of the Titans, not because he really even cares about the Titans, but because he doesn't like the gods. Like he's petty.
Because their
you know
ends
what I mean?
justify his means.
Exactly. Like he's not necessarily like completely agreeing with like their ideology. He has a specific ideology against the gods, and he's like, oh, you will benefit me because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and I don't care if we destroy the whole world. I don't care if we destroy Olympus. I don't care if a bunch of people die in my wake because of this like one idea that I have. And that's what I mean when I say that Luke is entitled, because he's like, oh, I've been through so much, so everyone else has to suffer. And that's like so ridiculous when you think about Camp Half-Blood and what the campers have gone through there, and how it's like literally a part of the text that all of them have suffered in different ways, and for him to be like, but my suffering was special, and therefore I'm going to make you all
special kind of suffering.
It's like, yeah, like you know what I mean? I can both feel sorry for him and also feel like, okay, but like that's a completely disproportionate reaction.
Now, is it that you feel sorry for him, or is it like, oh, should you pity him at this point?
Is like that? Is there a meaningful difference between pity and feeling sorry for someone?
Yes. I feel like there is. I feel like pity is more like you don't have to sympathize with them. You can understand, oh man, they're terrible.
It's sort of in between, I would say, because it's like I feel like bad for him, and I also think he's a jerk, but I still think it's sad what happened. Like that's really sad. That's, you know, if I had my way, if Luke was a real person, I would feel bad that happened, and I would be like, I'm sorry that happened to you, and I really wish it didn't because you didn't deserve that. But you also don't deserve to be forgiven, because just because you do something like really cruel and heartless because of bad things that have happened in the past doesn't mean it wasn't cruel. It doesn't mean it wasn't heartless.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you with that, because when it comes to like Luke, I guess if we want to have Percy Jackson's the hero, with all good heroes, you need to have a villain, and all good heroic stories need to have a tragedy or there's no drama.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like a very fascinating backstory for him, and it was heart-wrenching. Like, this is probably the saddest chapter of this series that I've read, one of them at least, because it feels very grounded in reality, and I could understand and relate to like these kinds of fears that a child would have. Like it feels like, you know, oh, what's like the worst possible thing a child could go through, and like that's kind of fleshing this out in this chapter.
Spiders.
Yeah. That too.
You said the worst possible thing. It has to either be spiders, Freddy Krueger, or worse.
Well, I guess the worst possible thing to happen to a child, based on our conversation, would be your parent turning into a spider. That would be.
Oh no!
That's it.
Terrible.
That's the worst of both worlds.
Oh man, this is terrible. I thought my greatest fear is my mom actually cooking.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
no, that's a huge fear.
Hey, B.
Hey, Zach.
So I lost all of our passwords. My mom washed them in my jeans.
Why were they in your jeans?
Because that's where you're supposed to keep all your passwords, right?
On a piece of paper in your jeans?
Yeah, exactly.
That's probably the worst place to keep your passwords.
What is a good way to keep my passwords then?
Dashlane Premium combines unlimited password storage synced across all your devices with dark web monitoring and a VPN for Wi-Fi protection. It's the easy solution for autofilling passwords and personal information combined with advanced tools you'll never want to browse without. For 20% off Dashlane Premium, go to dashlane.com/camphalfblood and enter code CampHalfBlood.
Wow, because of that, I don't have to wear super big pockets anymore. I'm going to wear some short shorts. Thanks, B.
If I went to this house and it was my mom making cookies, I would actually get out of the house. Like, this is too scary of a book.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about like the very sad psychology of this. So
Yeah, I think we have talked about this.
It's rough. It's a rough chapter, but there is a reason that they're there, other than to find out the very, very, very sad backstory of poor Luke, the genocidal maniac.
Well, we do find one kernel of a clue, which is Luke had come back a year ago to ask his mom for permission or her blessing. Then he was going to go to some certain river or something.
Yes, which I vaguely... Hold on, which river now? Okay, we'll get into my theories, but I feel like there's multiple magical rivers in mythology.
Yes, but there's only one that you need a blessing for.
It's not the river Styx. It's the other river. I don't remember the name of it.
No, the other river you're thinking of, the
one that erases your memory?
Yeah, that one you don't need a blessing for.
Right, so is it the river Styx?
You fall into it and you become a baby. I don't know. You tell me.
I guess.
They made a great album. Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto.
Yeah, I guess so. So yeah, this is like a weird chapter because then you go through all this like very sad backstory trauma stuff, and then you're like, oh right, there's a reason they're there other than that, and it's like to find out like a specific detail about this, which I guess then reveals Nico's plan, sort of. They don't really flesh it out exactly, but we kind of get an idea.
We haven't gotten there yet, too, and it gets more frustrating. We'll get to that because they end up leaving because this place is really depressing. This is like a TLC show waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Right between like I don't know, hoarders and then extreme mom couponing. It's like in between those time slots. So they end up getting out of there and they go meet up with Miss O'Leary and there's a mysterious figure waiting with her. And I like this. This is like one of my favorite scenes.
Oh, right. Yes. I forgot. What's her name?
This is where they meet Hestia.
Yeah, Hestia. So she has like a weird little conversation with them about like whether or not it's like worth it for them to follow through with Nico's plan, I guess. That's kind of the crux of the conversation.
Yes, and I like that we have a god, or I guess goddess, that's like a little girl at this point, which is really weird because Percy Jackson has seen her before in the very first book.
Yeah, the very beginning. Do they mention that in the text, or is that just like retconned?
That's retconned, I'm going to assume. Because I went back and I couldn't find anything about it. If not, that's Rick Riordan going for like the long haul.
Yeah, like he's like, oh, and put that little girl in there, and then for 4 books. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but regardless, she was there, I guess. This is sort of like the Die Hard thing of like, oh yeah, there was an ambulance in the truck the whole time.
Oh yeah, except I had my Die Hard party and I like looked into the truck and like, oh yeah, there's supposed to be an ambulance in here.
Oh yeah, and then there's no ambulance. Yeah, and they're like, let's just leave it. It's fine.
Well,
no one's gonna notice.
No one's gonna notice.
This isn't gonna be a cult classic that people are gonna pick apart for years.
Cult classic. This is just a Christmas movie.
That's very contentious. You shouldn't say that on a podcast. People are gonna send us emails.
I will fight someone for my dying
I agree.
breath.
I think it's
Die
a
Hard
Christmas
is a
movie.
Christmas movie.
I think it's. Did you see the Netflix special about it?
Yeah, the movies that made us.
Yeah, that was good.
I loved it. I watched it all in one sitting. That one and Dirty Dancing was so good.
I didn't see the Dirty Dancing one yet. I got halfway through the Ghostbusters one, and I was like, I'm not invested enough in Ghostbusters to care.
That one was fun, but I already knew a lot about
Yeah, I'm
Ghostbusters.
sure, because I know you're a big fan of that. I haven't watched the Dirty Dancing one yet, though. I did see the Home Alone one.
The Dirty Dancing one, I didn't care about Dirty Dancing, but then I ended up watching Dirty Dancing because of it.
Oh, that's interesting. All right, I might watch it. We'll see.
I don't care about Dirty Dancing.
Yeah. No, nobody puts baby in the corner. What a dumb line. Anyway, we're getting really distracted about Hestia. It's like, oh yeah, nobody puts Hestia in the corner.
Well, that's pretty much what happens in this because we get some interesting information.
Oh, she does. She does get put in the corner. You're right.
Oh my God. Because she gives up her seat to Dionysus, and that's what kind of like tilts the balance of power because there's supposed to be an equal number of female goddesses and gods on a council, but a good old-fashioned Dionysus being the hothead that he is.
Yeah, he's a jerk. We haven't
I like Hestia.
roasted him in a while, but he continues to be a jerk.
I love Hestia. Hestia is probably one of my favorite gods. And you know what? I found out something very interesting about her, which I don't think is a spoiler, but how would you characterize her?
Oh, that's difficult. I don't know. I mean, she seems pretty calm. Like, she's obviously, like, very inviting and warm, because that's, like, the kind of purpose of her mythology is she's, like, the goddess of the hearth, so.
And she's always portrayed as, like, a little girl, or at least a young maiden.
And is there a reason for that?
Well, no, because it's more inviting.
I
and
guess,
the
yeah.
idea of like going onto the campfire.
Less intimidating. It's like, oh, it's just a child. Like, well, though, again, we've established children can be creepy. So,
Well, children can be creepy, but she's actually the oldest daughter of Kronos.
oh
She's
no,
the oldest god there is.
yeesh. That's bad. So wait, does that mean that she's the sister of
Zeus, Poseidon, Hades. Yeah.
Yeah. That's weird.
And she's the one that's like very laissez-faire. And she's the one that like she'll give up her seats.
Oh yeah, of course, because all gods and whatever are children of Titans. That makes sense, of course.
Yes.
It's just weird to think about, I guess, because she's like a lesser god, but they're all kind of related. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because she's the lesser god, but yet she's the oldest out of all the gods.
And she seems so young, so that's kind of confusing.
I just thought that was so interesting when I found that out, but she's the patron saint of like the campfire song from SpongeBob.
Or the campfire song from Lightning Thief musical.
She's almost like the patron god of our podcast because we sit down next to the campfire and spin our yarns and have a jovial conversation.
Exactly, the metaphorical campfire. If we had a real campfire, it would be really loud in the mic, and there would be no pop filter could save us.
No, I think it'd just be very nice, warm, and welcoming. It'd be some nice ASMR.
Yeah, the Radio Cam Half-Blood Yule log.
I would love to do something like that. The problem, though, is like the only thing that I wouldn't be able to save is they have these slurping of like the hot cocoa. This is cocoa so good.
I could probably like film my living room and turn it into a Yule log. That's how cozy it is during the holiday season.
Are you gonna like throw like little like straw figures of like Luke on the fire to make it like Radio Camp Half-Blood log?
Yeah, just like burn his effigy because I hate his stupid face. See, I'm right back into roasting him. I don't care.
Oh, literally.
Literally, yeah.
Oh man. So what ends up happening is that Hestia is like, oh yeah, so are you gonna really follow through on this? And Percy's like, yeah, I'm going to. And she's like, fine, then I'll teleport you to your house.
Oh, but first she like makes a delicious meal of roast beef and baked potatoes and buttered carrots and bread, which sounds like my mom. Where it's just like you walk in and she's like, I've summoned this food out of the ethos.
Well, that's the great thing about being a god is that you can make people super duper fat because you're like, get some more food.
I mean, I'm not entirely convinced that my mom is not some sort of god of food because I don't know where it comes from. You just open a cabinet and you're like, I didn't know we had these cookies and they're just there.
That's like when I came to her house, like, I didn't know you had beer. Oh, she only has it for her guests.
Yeah, I only have it for guests though. We only had like 4 kinds. Just in case. Just in case.
Just in case, yes. So Percy Jackson, Nico, and Mrs. O'Leary get teleported to Percy's apartment, and it goes as much as you expect because of those trash New York apartments. Miss O'Leary is the size of like a garbage truck, so she takes up the entire living room.
I feel like she'd be even bigger than a New York apartment, like in comparison. I was kind of surprised she just didn't completely blow out the windows like in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, because like that's kind of what I imagined. New York apartments are tiny unless you have a lot of money. So
I'm going to take a wild guess and say Percy's mom doesn't have a lot of money, but I'm sure Mr. Blowfish has a lot of money.
Mr. Blowfish does, I get. But their like apartment's still pretty like normal sized, I think, based on the description. Even in this chapter, Percy says, "Oh yeah, I couldn't believe seeing this like full-sized house with like a yard and stuff because he's so used to a small New York apartment."
Here comes the problem though of it's like I really wish we could have seen the marriage between Sally Jackson and Paul.
Right, it happens off screen. Yeah, it's weird because you come back to them and then it's like, "Oh yeah, my parents." Like he calls them their parents, which is like that's a little weird.
His stepdad.
Right? Like I guess it's his stepdad, but like that seems I don't know. I guess so much of like his like endearing to Mr. Blowfish. What's his first name again? I feel weird calling him Paul. Yeah. Him endearing himself to Paul and vice versa has like so much of that has happened like in between books or like not on the page. So then it's just like very strange sometimes to be like, oh right, I guess they're like a family now.
Well, it's kind of strange because there's like that weird time skip.
Yeah, exactly.
But I really wish that was like a short story. It would have been a nice, sweet short story about Paul and Sally's wedding.
Yeah, I bet there's tons of fanfic.
Oh, yes, there's plenty of fan fiction, I'm sure. No, it's probably other characters' weddings.
Probably, yeah, that's true. Probably like the demigods, but maybe not Sally Jackson. I don't know if there's like a big contingent of people who care about Sally Jackson enough to write fanfic about her.
Well, no, people love Sally Jackson. She's like one of the world's greatest like literary moms.
I know she's beloved, but I don't know if people like want to write about her because it's like people are more into being like, oh, the ships or whatever. So who knows?
I guess, yeah. Well, no, they'd probably do like a prequel of like Poseidon and her.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, yeah, I could see that.
That seems more likely than Paul and Sally's
Paul
wedding.
is like too boring. He's just like he's just like this sweet professor.
Oh no, I feel like I'd hang out with him. We'd probably get like frozen yogurt. We'll get some Frogo, and then we'll hang out with like sandals and socks, and then talk about grilling.
Yeah. He just seems like a very kind of dull but sweet man. It's kind of the vibe, which is exactly what Sally needs, honestly. She doesn't need more struggles. She doesn't need like a really intense person in her life. She's got enough of that. She needs just like a very milquetoast man.
She's already murdered a man. I don't think she needs to murder another
His
one.
personality is what I would like to describe as beige, which is fine.
Beige?
She needs beige. She has plenty of blue already.
If Paul was a spice, he'd be flour.
Yeah, basically, yeah. An unseasoned roux.
So guess what happens? They have like a nice little conversation about everything. Is like Paul's like, oh my God, it's true. All of it. The Sith, the Jedi.
All of it. But he knew that, which is kind of, I don't know, I guess.
Well, he didn't believe him.
He didn't believe it. And also a lot of that conversation, I guess, again, happens not on the page. So they have to be like, see, they did have this conversation. He does understand that it's real, but like now he's really understanding it because he's like physically seeing it. Because before he was like willfully being like, oh yeah, I did see the like giant dog print on the car, but I just kind of was like, oh, that's weird. But I couldn't really picture it being real, which I don't know. I feel like once I saw that, I'd be like, okay, it's real. Like, why would you fake that?
No, I'd be like, oh my God, why is there a bear in my car?
Yeah, I think that Mrs. O'Leary is bigger than a bear, from what I understand.
Well, she's bigger than a battleship.
Yeah, she's a big girl. So.
Yep, she really needs to like, get those nice open fields. She's a heck hound.
Yeah.
But I guess their big conversation they have is kind of Percy Jackson lays out what has happened, gives her the plan, even though Percy doesn't talk about the plan whatsoever. This would have been the great time for the big reveal.
We kind of know what it is a little bit. Well, we'll talk about that.
We kind of know what it is. But basically the most important thing though is that Percy Jackson needs to ask Sally for permission, which is a very nice, sweet, tender scene because she knows what's going to happen pretty much. It's like, oh yeah, this is bad and I want you to come back and you need to give me a sign, even if you die.
Yeah, it's sweet that she's like, oh, I want you to tell me that you're safe. But she does like give her blessing, I guess, because she wants Percy to do what he has to do. But it's...
No, because Paul is like, he's the one that's like, yeah, you have to give him the blessing.
He does, yeah, he leans on her a little bit. It's like, you got to do it. And he's doing something noble. And I think that he's doing the right thing. And like, yeah, it's kind of Paul steps up there for a second. It's like, hey, I know
Paul.
You're sad.
Paul's so
but
nice.
Yeah, I like Sally too. Like she obviously has a concern for her son, but at the same time she knows it's like, oh, you got to go out and do your thing. That's been a theme for a while though, right? Where she's sort of like, I'm worried about you, but you're a demigod, so like kind of out of sight, out of mind. You go off and do your dangerous stuff, and I'll try not to think about it.
Man, it must suck to have like a child soldier.
Yeah, no, it's horrible. I mean, like
child.
that's pretty much the theme of this chapter, right? Because like the first half of it is all about how Luke's mom has had to deal with horrible things.
You see one side of what happens when you're a demigod and you have to have all these responsibilities. And then you see it from Sally's point of view where like that could easily happen to her because once again, there's parallels between Sally and May and how Sally can also see into the mist.
Right, exactly. So that concern is definitely raised. And then also briefly, Percy's like, and I also was thinking about Rachel. So all of them have the same capability. And I guess
Do you think they're all going to go crazy?
I don't know. I don't think so because when you meet Hestia, she says, oh, well, some people deal with it better. And then there's also the weird, vague thing about May being like given this like task to do this important job. We're not entirely sure what, but she like quote unquote saw too much. So like it's something like that. And then there's also like if you see through the mist, sometimes like people take it better or worse depending on, I don't know, arbitrary reasons, it seems like. But yeah, I don't necessarily think that Rachel or Sally are going to go through that. I don't know. I mean, like Rachel's been kind of hinted at as like she had visions of Luke and like weird stuff like that. So I don't know if
She takes
that's
paintings and stuff. She pretty much just proved that the one painting that she has of Luke is actually true because it's the exact same painting as the picture in her house.
right. It's the same as the painting in the house. So like I don't know if she's gonna like lose her mind necessarily or like I don't know. We need to find out more lore about the whole seeing through the mist and like what that does and exactly what May's job was. But in the meantime, I'm not like convinced it just like is inherently like gonna happen. You know what I mean?
You go crazy.
Yeah, it's not like it.
If you have this as a gift.
Yeah, it's not everyone who has that gift who has problems. I think it's.
What is this Wheel of Time where if you're a magic user and you're a man, you go insane?
Oh, I had never heard that lore, but yeah, it's kind of like that same idea. I don't think it's that. I think there's other extenuating circumstances that we don't quite know yet. Well, you know, I don't know.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I've been hallucinating because of this flu. I could have forgotten everything. I could be like talking into a tin can right now and realize that during the flu, like my brain got all melted. So I'm just, I don't even. We're not even friends.
Yeah, this is just like one long, elaborate hallucination before you die of a fever. This entire episode is just you having visions, auditory hallucinations.
No, it's gonna be like exactly like in the Joker. It's going to be like I call you up. Hey, you're Zach, right? I think you were a guest on my podcast.
Oh man. Oh, this whole thing wasn't real.
This whole thing wasn't real at all.
Well, that's sad and spooky, which is fitting with this chapter.
That's the great thing about Percy Jackson is it can be very sad and it can be very spooky at times.
Yeah, it's true.
So the chapter kind of ends the way that's like a big action movie. It's like, we got to get to the underworld. Luckily, I know a shortcut, Nico says.
Oh yeah, the shortcut to the underworld. Of course he does. He's been traveling through shadows and stuff, so like there's definitely a shortcut to the underworld somehow. It's not the labyrinth, right? Was the labyrinth destroyed? It was destroyed.
Yeah, the labyrinth was destroyed.
Yeah, it was destroyed already because of the thing that happened with Daedalus. So that's not.
No, they got to go on like
option.
they got to go on a nice road trip. It's going to take half the book.
Yeah, no, they just have to use the shadow thing probably, or some other spooky Hades thing that we didn't know about like a couple books
I don't
ago.
know how I would feel about like a Nico Percy road trip book.
I don't know.
I feel like it would get really dull very quickly.
Same. I feel like in some ways they're like too similar actually. Like they don't like chafe against each other enough. Like Nico's a little bit sadder, but he's just sort of like a sadder version of Percy.
Oh man, you've heard it here, folks. Nico D'Angelo's a sadder version of Perseus Jackson.
He kind of is. I mean, I don't know. I feel like you need like this sort of like someone like Annabeth who's like very headstrong, like disagreeing with him for it to be interesting or funny. You know what I mean?
Oh, then you would add Clarice to this? I'd love like a road trip. There you go.
Oh, geez. That's bad. How about Clarice and Annabeth going on? Clarice, Annabeth, and Nico is like the funniest trio ever.
I feel like Rick Riordan would like submit this manuscript. Is like, this is like 3,000 pages. Yeah, I know. I kind of went a little crazy in the middle.
Yeah.
This is only the first part. They haven't even left Jersey yet.
Exactly. Yeah, they're too busy fighting over, I don't know. Clarice will probably fight over anything.
You have Hoarding with May, and then right afterwards on TLC, you can watch the Percy, Clarice, and Annabeth road trip.
Yeah. And then you'll never want to do anything again because you'll be too sad.
I'll be too sad. Oh, man. So let's get ready for some predictions, everybody. B, what is the name of the next chapter?
The name of the next chapter is Chapter 7, My Math Teacher Gives Me a Lift. His math teacher.
Oh, no.
Wait, is Mr. Blofeld a math teacher or is he an English? He's an English teacher.
B, what is the name of the very first chapter of Percy Jackson?
I don't remember.
I accidentally vaporized my pre-algebra teacher.
Oh my god, no. Oh no. Wait a second. It's what's her name? Mrs. Dodds? Is Mrs. Dodds gonna appear because, like, monsters appear again? Aw, jeez. Oh, man.
Oh, geez, Rick.
I mean, okay. He defeated her with a pen that he didn't know was a sword before he even knew he was a demigod. So, like, I'm not too concerned. But also it says, my math teacher gives me a lift. Like, does she pick him up? Like, because I don't think that it's like a literal taxi service thing happening, but they're traveling to the underworld. I'm like so confused. Is she like cursed to like bring people to the underworld somehow? I have so many questions.
B, remember she's a Fury and she was supposed to hunt down the Helm of Shadows
Yeah.
from Hades. So who knows?
Well, that'll be weird to see her again. Now I can't think of Mrs. Dodds without thinking of that very funny puppet from the musical. The puppet cracks me up. It's so funny.
Ooh, spooky puppet.
Yeah, it's both spooky and funny.
So B, here's the $1 million drachma question.
Yeah.
What do you think the plan is going to be?
Oh, geez. Okay, so not the underworld thing, but the plan that we've been hinting at for like so many chapters, like 3 different books.
I'm very eager. You texted me and said that you had a plan. You knew what the plan was. So what is it?
I don't know what the plan is, but like they're talking about Luke getting permission from his mom, and then Luke became Kronos. So it's like some sort of like weird absorbing into a Titan or a god or something, and I feel like that's what Percy is doing because he won't be strong enough to fight them otherwise. So like they're going to the underworld to like get a Titan, I guess, or another like mythological being. Probably a Titan and not a god because the gods are like helping him. So I don't know. I think it's like something like that where he's like going to be fused with like another person somehow, and they're going to be like super strong.
So they'll be basically the same power level?
They'll be Mecha Godzilla.
Mecha Godzilla? Oh man.
Yeah, or actually no, like sort of more like a kaiju, I guess, not like a kaiju, or what is the in Pacific Rim, like the big
Drift
they'll be like drift
compatible? Are you talking about a Jaeger?
Yeah, they'll be in a big Jaeger. Him and Nico? I don't think it's him and Nico though, because Nico's just like one of the big 3.
Well, see, they become a super combiner robot. They have to also get Thalia, so they can become super god.
Yeah, exactly. All 3 of them. Yeah, like putting their like Care Bear powers together and becoming one. Like
Care Bear
do you know what I mean? And like a
together?
giant rainbow comes up.
What?
Do you know what I mean?
No, I don't know what you're talking about. I never watched Care Bears.
I never did either. This is just what I've gleaned from like
The
cultural
only thing that I
osmosis.
know about Care Bears is the movie. I think they fight the devil.
I'm not surprised, but you know what I mean. Like a sort of a Captain Planet, put your rings together, we're going to combine forces situation. But it's like more dark than that, I think, because he's going to the underworld. I don't quite know, but it's like something like that where they're like, he's going to be like in a mech or like in another body or combining.
In a mech? I love this.
Well, I mean, listen, there are mechs because that's literally what Daedalus was, but I don't think that that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to be some sort of like weird soul combiney thing with some other person, but I don't know who yet.
Man, this is going to be a super crazy thing. We got combiner robots, we got Jaegers, we got
I don't
fighting.
think it's literally
this turned
that.
into
But
an
like,
awesome
that
book.
kind of
Man.
idea, though, of like what Luke did with Kronos, but with another character. With like I guess, would it be with the Titan that they erased his brain? Maybe?
Oh, you mean Bob?
With Bob, yeah. But is Bob that strong? He's a Titan, but is he like an important Titan or he's just some guy?
He's a Titan. He's a really big bad Titan who's now Bob.
Yeah, who's now Bob.
He's Bobbert.
That'd be funny if he fused with Bob. I don't know. I don't know what's happening. Those are my guesses.
Well, those are some pretty good guesses, and I'm excited for what is to come because we're still going through Percy Jackson and The Last Olympian. We're almost there. We still don't know who The Last Olympian is. Or do we?
We do know.
Ooh, who?
It's Hestia, right?
Yeah.
Because she says that it's ding, the phrase of the book title. Yeah. She mentions that. I almost forgot that she goes like, oh, Last Olympian. I was like, wait a second, I'm reading The Last Olympian.
Yeah, she's the last Olympian.
Yeah. So it's not in like the spooky way that it seems to hint at in the book title. It's just like, I mean, it's kind of spooky, but like basically that she's the only one left because everyone else is fighting and she's like minding Olympus, I guess. That's kind of why she's the last Olympian. She's like the only one left. It's sort of like Home Alone. It's Home Alone, but with a god.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to read some emails?
So yeah, we got a few emails this week. The first one is from William, who says, "Hi, Zack and B. I'm back with another email. Smiley face. First of all, congrats. I mean, it's a bit late, so sorry. I was a bit busy at school. Hehe. Anyway, thanks for the good content that you provide. It really motivates me to do projects and performance tasks. Lol. I may have said this before, but I would rate your podcast 20 out of 10. Smiley face.
Oh, wow.
P.S. If anyone listening is a dog lover, or maybe one of the two of you is a dog lover, I suggest that you listen to Can I Pet Your Dog? Anyways, keep horsing around. I already listened. Yeah, I
already listened to that podcast.
Yeah, we both do. We both love dogs, so we both listen to that podcast. It's good. It's very chipper. Yeah, sometimes it's like a bit too high energy for me, and I'm like, if I'm like about to go to bed, I'm like, I can't listen to this. They're just like a little bit too, it's a morning podcast, you know what I mean?
Fun fact, I listened to that with my dog.
Oh, I bet Rosie loves it.
She's like, oh God, again?
I love the theme song. I love the theme song of that podcast. It's good. Yeah, I think they follow my former hedgehog on Instagram, weirdly.
Nice.
So that's my claim to fame.
That is some big claim to fame right there. So we did get another email. This is from Lynette. It says, keep it up. I listen to your entertaining podcast during my commute to and from work. Let me first say that I am 60 years old, and I've read thousands of books since I was 5 years old, and I'm not your typical demographic, but great entertainment attracts all kinds of people. That email that you read on this podcast was unfair to the both of you. I listen to many podcasts from all genres, and yours ranks among my top 5.
Oh, thank you.
I love your passion and consistency. You bring joy and wonder to your audience, and that's no small feat, so keep it up. P.S. Zach, I live less than 5 miles from the Puente Hills Mall, and when you mentioned the annual reunion for Back to the Future movies, I cracked up. Never knew it. I have to say that I might have to join you all next year. I'll bring cookies.
Aw, that's sweet. Thank you.
That's actually kind of sweet.
What a great email. That's really nice.
That is such a wonderful email. And to answer your question about the Puente Hills Mall, it's every year. I'm in that picture. It's a lot of fun, but we meet up at around when... I'm still feverish right now, so I can't even tell. 1:15 a.m. Puente Hills. Yeah, so meet there. There's gonna be a bunch of DeLoreans there. It's a lot of fun. Don't feel intimidated going if you're going by yourself, because I'll be there, but everyone else there is super nice and awesome.
Yeah, thank you for your email. That's really sweet. Also really cool that you're like an older listener, because I feel like there's a lot of listeners our age, a lot of younger listeners, but we don't always get people, you're like my mom's age, so that's pretty cool.
But it's interesting to have like older listeners too, because I'm sure they give even much bigger perspective of books, especially how they've changed.
You read like thousands of books, so that's, I can't even imagine how I would read when I'm older. Like that might change, you know what I mean? I never really thought of that, but that's kind of true. Like as you read more, I bet that gives you a lot of new perspective on things you've read.
Yeah, especially with like people listening to like podcasts. It seems like such a newer thing, so it's not weird. It's unique to hear from older people when it comes to like podcasts as well, because that seems like a more young people medium.
Right, yeah, the medium that we're on for sure is like for younger people too. Like, my mom still is like, how do you do the podcast again? It's like, so there's definitely like a technology literacy barrier sometimes when it comes to that kind of thing. And then, also younger people too have a difficult time. So we're just like right in that sweet spot of like people like 10 and up usually.
Yeah, it's like that weird 10 and up, or we get people that are like nostalgic.
Yeah,
so
like
now we have
age.
someone that's like super nostalgic.
Yeah, you're nostalgic for books that came out when you were like an adult already, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, our last email is from Taylor, who says, hi, my name is Taylor, and I'm a 19-year-old from Las Vegas. I'm a daughter of Athena. I've been listening to your podcast for quite some time now, and I love the format. I exclusively listen to literary podcasts, and the best format I have found is where one person doesn't know the books and the other person does. I've heard this is a common thing, like Potter lists, for example.
This is a very common thing, yeah.
I wish you all would read Heroes of Olympus next, but I hope you read Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, because it is my favorite series. The amount of representation Rick puts in his books after the PGO series really pops off. Also, I'm a special education major, and I really like how the series portrays things like ADHD and dyslexia as strengths. Sorry that this email was long. I really enjoy your podcast and wanted you to know that. Love, Taylor. Your email wasn't long. Don't worry about it. But thank you for your very kind words.
Yeah, thank you so much for the very, very kind words, especially being like a special education major and fighting the good fight and helping so many wonderful people.
Yeah, that's really cool. We need more people like that, because there's all sorts of neurodivergent people out there who learn different, who need help, and that's really cool that you're doing that.
And some of them might be demigods, so maybe they might need your help.
According to Percy Jackson, a lot of them are demigods, so that's also cool.
Well, according to Percy Jackson, I should be a demigod, but all I have is anxiety.
You are the camp's official radio host, so Are you a demigod?
Shh, B, you're not supposed to tell them that we broadcast from Long Island.
Oh God, I'm really glad I'm not in Long Island right now.
Oh, thank God. Oh no, because
Not to roast Long Island or anything, but a little bit. Just a little bit.
So B, we didn't get any Apple Podcast reviews this week, but we did get something even better. We actually got a sponsorship from Dashlane.
We did, yeah, which is really exciting because sponsorships
It's kind
are
of
cool.
a funny story, actually.
Yeah, I mean, if you follow us on Twitter, and especially if you follow the quote-unquote official meme page at radio_half on Twitter, run by lovely friend Robert.
Yes, very lovely man.
He made a hilarious joke about us getting sponsored by Dashlane because we can't remember our passwords. I don't even remember how it happened, but we were talking on Twitter, and I was just like, you know what? I wouldn't mind a sponsorship from Dashlane, and lo and behold, now we have one, so that's pretty cool.
Yes, and that's amazing because I'm just imagining like they're sitting there and like, oh, just someone's like on their computer and then they get this thing, oh, look, it's Radio Camp Half-Blood. Yo, dog, let's give them some awesome password stuff because I am garbage at remembering passwords. And I was like, oh, thank God.
No, it came from a sincere place of us both being bad at remembering passwords. It's true.
I can't remember what I had for breakfast today, so this is helpful.
Yeah.
Well,
so that's exciting.
Yeah, that is so exciting. So B, where can they find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at bkellygorman, and you can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com. If you are following me on social media, you may have seen my boyfriend's cat, Inky, is unfortunately sick right now. She needs surgery, and we started a crowdfund for her. We're doing okay right now. We're a little over halfway there. We need like $700, a little less than that, for Inky to be healthy for Christmas. So if you're feeling in the holiday spirit, if you're in a generous mood and want to help or just signal boost, check that out on Fundly. You can go to my Twitter page and it's the pinned tweet. Thank you.
If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at Suda41, that's SUDA41. If you want to follow our show on Twitter, that's at halfblood_radio. If you want to email the show, you can email us at radiocamphalfblood@gmail.com. We have t-shirts available at TeePublic, so go to www.teepublic.com/radiocamphalfblood. And we have a Patreon, patreon.com/radiocamphalfblood. And if you use the promo code CampHalfBlood on Dashlane, you can get 20% off on all wonderful password protecting needs. And there'll be a link down in the show notes for that, as well as we have a very lovely ad that helps you guys. Well, guys, I'm Zach.
I'm B.
And let's keep staying mortal. See ya.
Bye.